Sorry, I forgot to hit record. Today, we'll be exploring how an Industry 4.0 capability can really bring bottom line value to your business. And we're going to show you how you can improve your strategy and come up with some realistic results. So the topics we're going to cover are going to be what justifies the Industry 4.0 journey, what is Industry 4.0 functionality, and really how to get started with your own version of an Industry 4.0 vision for your business. And so there is going to be a lot of dialogue and opportunity and Q&A, both at the end and a couple spots during the presentation. If you do have questions, I do ask that you leverage the meeting chat and feel free to ask questions along the way. And as we gather those, we will answer and respond together. All right, Nigel, take it away.
Thanks, John. Hi, everybody. We're going to talk about the journey. Industry 4.0 is a journey. And I thought what I'd do is start by giving you some feedback from the trade media at large that's more or less telling me a little bit about, where everybody's at as far as Industry 4.0 is concerned. And their statement is, their perception is that the adoption of Industry 4.0 is slow, especially in the smaller organizations, which represent about 80% of the manufacturing businesses in North America. So, we're still getting there in terms of jumping on this journey. And like everything, leadership in these organizations will continue to struggle with the significant amount of investment necessary to justify moving into Industry 4.0. And the other thing I picked up is that there's a low awareness of the extent of the intended functionality possible with Industry 4.0. Everybody's got the perception that it's kind of a form of system automation, but it's a little bigger than that. And so to combat that kind of positioning, that's where we came up with the agenda, where we'll justify why, in a lot of different ways, why Industry 4.0 makes sense to do, and then what the functionality really is on 4.0, at least my version anyway, and then get started on perhaps how you might eat the elephant as far as Industry 4.0 is concerned, and we'll get into that in the course of the hour. So first up, what justifies Industry 4? I wanted to give you a little bit about me because, it is a story. I've got a lot of time in industry, and I've been through a lot of the, I've lived through Industry 3 pretty much. And I started out in England as a 16-year-old apprentice, and I ended up with a manufacturing engineering degree, and moved on and done a lot of things, including writing a book on productivity and on lean thinking in the late 80s. So a lot of experience in terms of what's happening, what's been happening, and what is happening to us. And then recently I've written another book which I'll get into. So the point is that probably the most important part of the journey for me was in the 80s. I was at Motorola, which was one of the great places to be, making change happen in the electronics industry. And then at the end of the 80s, I moved off and started consulting on Lean and Six Sigma. And I've been doing that pretty much ever since, that I've gone back and helped my clients with their manufacturing journey. So I think really best thing to say is for all of us that have been in the business that long, through that period of the 80s to the 90s, we were really following a continuous improvement journey and getting our head around how we would improve our businesses. And even back then in the 80s, we were talking about something called computer integrated manufacturing, which is kind of the forerunner of Industry 4. And then, of course, at the end of the decade, I wrote my book on lean thinking. And so then I moved off and started consulting. And one of the advantages, one of the experiences that was good was I moved out of the electronics industry and went to meat packing and automotive industry and pharmaceutical. So I've had a pretty good broad view and stay in touch with all the industries that I've been involved with. And it's clear that there's a lot of opportunity across the board, not just in any one sector, for Industry 4.0 to help. And as you'll see, I've been around different places in the world looking at manufacturing. And so when I'm talking about the bigger picture of where Industry 4 can help. Really, the sort of watershed was around the late 2000s, late 90s. I was in Mexico running a plant in the northern part of Mexico, Maquiladora, and then was asked to go to China in 2002 to start globalized manufacturing. And that changed the game for a lot of us because we've been focusing on continuous improvement for our own local manufacturing sites. And now we were moving into globalized manufacturing and more of a supply chain culture of improvement. And that's where we've been. And in fact, I was in China for 6 years and I came back in 2010. It was horrified with what I've been part of, which was to pretty much hollow out our local manufacturing base. And we've had significant erosion, as I'll show you, of our manufacturing base and, inability to really compete with the offshore activities. So when I came back, I started working with the Society of Manufacturing Engineers, which I was chapter chair of for a while, and we started an initiative called Take Back Manufacturing, which was a forum dedicated to the restoration of manufacturing. And really, we started to talk about raising awarenesses about how we lost a lot of our manufacturing capability to the offshore environment. And so that gave me a good view as to what was wrong with our existing situation. Hooked up with the reshoring initiative, stayed with those guys, working with Harry Moser from the reshoring initiative for many, many years since we came back in 2010. And of course, just right now, reshoring is a hot topic. And that's why I wrote the book, Take Back Manufacturing, last August, to really put in perspective the journey we've been on in the last few decades and where we need to change again. And so, it's pretty clear that we've got a change in heart now as far as what globalized manufacturing should look like in the future. And there's concerns about the sustainability of globalized manufacturing and its cost effectiveness. And also the geopolitical stability is creating some discussion at the political will level as far as where we should take our capability to manufacture. And so we see a significant sea change again and move perhaps back to more localized manufacturing with reshoring. And so the book covers the history, what we need to change, the recovery plan, etc. And what I want to do today is just tell you a little bit quickly about what happened to us and where we need to go. This is a Canadian perspective. I understand quite a few of you are in Canada. We lost a lot of trade. This is just the manufacturing community of the Canadian economy. And we lost a lot of trade balance from about 2000 onwards. And it got 10 times worse if you extract the oil industry from that picture. And in fact, right now, today, we still have a negative balance, even though we've got a lot of resources that we can play with. Our domestic share of manufacturing dropped by 20 points. We lost half of our global share. And you can see that we've got significant trade imbalance across different partners, global partners, especially if they're a low-cost country. So we've lost a lot of the capability to be a manufacturing entity within our own space. And that's really the message from that chart. What happened in 2010 was when I came back and I looked at the numbers, we were seeing about a 25% advantage in being offshore from local manufacturing. This was early globalization. Perhaps we didn't fully understand the hidden costs, but that was really where we thought our prices and our costs were. And what's happened since then, in around about 2015, we started to do balance sourcing. We started to look at the hidden costs that were defined in the supply chain. We started to see costs increasing offshore in terms of some of the labor costs and certainly logistical costs. And around about 2015, and this was predicted by Boston Consulting Group, we saw a tipping point reached for reshoring back in some commodities to local communities closer to the customer. So for 2015, we've been talking about reshoring. And in fact, if you start looking at where the costs are going today, especially interest rates, then it's pretty clear that we're going to see in 2025 a clear message of reshoring. And that's what Thomas Industries is predicting and reporting and stating now that 85% of corporations are pursuing in North America within USMCA a reshoring strategy, which is pretty huge. And that means that we're going to, we got to rethink our supply chains and rethink our manufacturing capability going forward. Now, if you also couple that with Industry 4.0 and start applying Industry 4.0, which does, reduce the improve productivity and reduce labor content, the labor differential is further reduced with Industry 4.0, which makes any advantage of a low-cost labor country less important. It's better to be closer to the customer, avoid those long supply chains, and that increasing exchange rate and, quite frankly, the large interest rates that are going on, rather than stick with a long supply chain. So this chart kind of shows that, as you reduce your labor content, you start to move to a point where the expense of the supply chain outweighs any advantage you might get from low-cost labor. If you then use Industry 4.0 and strip that labor out further by automation and all of the systemics that go with it, then it's a no-brainer. You bring your manufacturing back closer to your customer. So that's the message. So each business, not everything's going to come back. It's not a stampede. It won't be herd behavior like when we left, but we need to take a look, and by running the numbers and looking at our balanced sourcing strategy for reshoring the parts of our business. And obviously there's some capitalization and recapitalization required, but that's the trend that the industry is seeing. And that's why you're seeing a lot of sectors now, semiconductor, for example, beginning to reshore back to the regional trade bloc that we're part of. Now, there's two things driving it. One is the business initiatives that I've mentioned, which are, quite frankly, the Industry 4.0 advantage, and also just the way things are in the world right now. But also the political driven initiatives of the geopolitical situation and the breakdown, and perhaps just the whole view that we've been at this with global supply chains for a while, and we're not seeing the productivity, we're not seeing the prosperity that we were before, and there's some pressure now to move back more to a regional trade bloc and own our own manufacturing again. Now, there's some issues. When we reshore, we're going to need to recapitalize. So we're going to have to wait in some industries, for the recapitalization cycle to take place. And that's going to take some time. But when the numbers make sense, then we're going to have to also add restructuring of our infrastructure with government support. And quite frankly, we're going to have to relearn how to manufacture again and retrain our people in some sectors to make it happen. It's a big undertaking, a lot going on. So, our Take Back Manufacturing initiative really took a look at three parallel imperatives. One was government policies, which we believe are going to get looked at in some of our, in fact, I think there's some changes taking place in terms of policies, in terms of where we're going to manufacture in the future, to level the playing field. We certainly think our educational system needs a rebalancing act so that we have a more integrated industrial learning system, so we become more trained rather than educated. And also on the industry side, there's work to do on supply chain strategy, but quite frankly, getting that Industry 4.0 execution underway is going to help a lot with the decision-making for reshoring. So that's really the first bullet. The message is that Industry 4.0 forces the obvious, which is that we need to reshore, and it gives you that buoyancy as far as your costs are concerned. By taking the advantage away from any low-cost country that's at the other end of a long supply chain. So I don't know if there's any questions, John, or should I keep going?
Not seeing any questions at the moment.
Okay. So that's pretty much a lot of people are justifying Industry 4.0 and lean, by the way. Industry and lean go together. Industry 4.0 and lean are a mutual pair. Quite frankly, that is if you start to reposition yourself for local productivity, and quite frankly, we've taken our eye off the ball. We've been more interested in the efficiency of our supply chains, and now that and not so much about our local capability and its productivity. If you now re-engage with lean in Industry 4.0 locally, then the justification is clear that you can afford to bring manufacturing back home and start to grow your business in a much more localized manner. So let's talk about the other issue, which was what really is Industry 4.0. And I'll spend a bit of time on this because, there's been a lot of, I've heard a lot of different statements about what it is. So let me just try to explain. It certainly is lean and green and automated. We want to make sure that we got a sustainable future as far as our businesses are concerned. But it is also a very great, strong lever for taking back manufacturing, where we've got that opportunity. So let's take a look at the kind of picture that's been presented many times. I'm sure you've seen this. The fourth revolution. We've been through at least 3 of them. I lived through most of the second and third revolution. I started in the 60s, which is the end of the second, and I've been right through the third. And I'll just to put it in perspective, this is the kind of toolkit that we had going through the second revolution. Towards the end of that revolution, we had paper punch tape on the shop floor. We were using vernier gauges with a vernier scale. I did my degree with a slide rule. We were handling those punch card things that we abhor now, but that's exactly where we were at the end of the second revolution. We've gone into the beginning of the third revolution with better tools, beginnings of computerized environment, and then we ended it pretty much where we are today with strong tools, cloud-based ERP, handhelds, and now the ability to have some of our automation equipment CNC capable and novel ways of using automation for inspection, etc. That's kind of where we are. Now that's still, a lot of people would say, well, we're there. And I'm saying, no, we're not there. We're not in Industry 4. This is Industry 3.0, where we are today. Industry 4.0 is cyber physical systems, which is connecting computers to processes without human intervention. So here's a quick sort of picture of a typical Industry 3.0 environment where we've got significant amount of technology shown here, but it's not Industry 4. It's actually got hands in every picture. If you look at this one, the only one that's got no hands in it is number D, and clearly the others are still 3, and the only one that comes close to being a 4.0 solution is number D. And the way that that's really what cyber physical means. It's connecting computers to processes without human intervention. And so, putting it in perspective, we got to get rid of the hands. It's really a best way to describe the difference between 3 and 4. Another way it's described is we've allowed ourselves in Industry 3 to embed our people, our organization between the process and the systems. It's been frustrating. We've trapped ourselves between the process and the computer, and we've become slaves to these computers, if you will. Where we want to go, I'm not sure we're all going to put our feet on the table, but with Industry 4.0 is we'll at least liberate the people from the system, and allow the system to connect directly to the process, and basically allow for a much more low error, low problem with system integrity, and also some productivity. And so to summarize, cyber physical systems provide that opportunity to connect the process directly with the computer and liberate your manpower so that they can do other things. Now, there's 5 advanced technologies that have been touted as being disruptive. I'm going to talk about 3 of them. First one is networks. We call it connectivity because some people call it the industrial internet of things, but being able to connect all of your equipment together before you go too far and automate is necessary so that you can eliminate the infrastructure between. And this is improving. We're seeing a general trend upwards in terms of as we put new capital into the game, as new technologies and different platforms come into effect, we're seeing more connectivity across the board on networks. Also, the second thing that provides that sort of integrity and future is that, we've had automation before, but now we're talking about advanced automation. Some people call it advanced robotics. But what we're doing now is we're using smart sensor technology so that we can feel and see the process from an automation point of view. And there's a comment here. we've seen some distraction over the years because we've been focused on supply chains, not on reducing or improving our productivity. And we're seeing that uptick at the end now, showing that people are recapitalizing using some of these smart technologies to give them that capability. So it's encouraging to see that upward trend, but we still have a long way to go. We got a lot of old plant out there that's, in fact, the used capital market in manufacturing is being very prolific, and unfortunately that shows a bad sign that we aren't using the new technologies as much. Now, as we move forward and start to reshore, then we're going to have to rethink our capitalization so that we get the latest bang for the buck in terms of this automation and the advanced state that it's in. Third one, which is really, really prolific, is artificial intelligence or big data. What's happened here is it's exponentially rising. A lot more development to do in this particular area, though we've got some tools evolving. We've moved from hardware and software to knowledgeware, and now we're in thoughtware stage. So we're actually at the point where we're no longer we just worried about putting our knowledge into a computer, but we're looking at whether we can actually use it to think for us, basically. So that's really the sort of state of the art now, is to go to thoughtware. So you take those top three, those are the three I would predict or need to be focused on as far as Industry 4. The other two are there, but they're not really, for most of the manufacturing arena, not as important. What I want to do now is I want to take you through, and I've got plenty of time, I'm going to slow up a little bit, but I want to make sure you realize that what we've done so far is created an environment for Industry 4. We've explained what it is. It's cyber physical, but how do you actually structure it into your business? What does it really look like? So let me first of all say that this is a traditional vertical organization. This is, imagine that you have a vertical organization, a pre-lean organization. It would look like that. What we need to do first, before we can even go near Industry 4.0, is structure ourselves into a lean business process so that we've got things flowing through our business. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult to install Industry 4.0 inside it. So I've given a link here to a positional paper on how you must go to lean before you go to Industry 4. At least you got to lean out the process prior, or certainly in concert with Industry 4.0. You can't go straight to Industry 4.0 with a vertical, non-lean organization. It just doesn't work. You'll be automating a lot of waste. So let's assume that we've got this structure, this lean structure, and let's put it into a framework, which is going to now be our Industry 4.0 structure, and populate it with the kinds of subsystems we need for Industry 4.0. And for some of you, it'll be no surprise that ERP is right there at the top in the center. Obviously, if you're installing ERP or planning to finish the thought, that's the right strategy, because you need that central capability to drive your business. The rest of it will flow into that ERP environment. You also, if you do a lot of new product introduction, if you've got a lot of product responsibility, you're going to need a very strong and capable computer-aided engineering environment. And to finish the thought, you need a strong quality management system to compete, which also needs to be automated in. It can't be continuous paper flow that you've had. We typically would have thought of for quality systems of the past. So if you now look below, you'll see that in the green at the bottom is your physical process, your supply chain your various value-added process steps that you follow in your inventory system, and your distribution network at the end. So there's your physical business. And layered on top of that is the Industry 4.0 environment. Again, ERP, CAE, and a QMS at the top. And then three things. You got the stuff that manages the supply chain on the left-hand side. I'll talk a bit about that. And then the stuff that would manage your distribution system, if it's significant, on the right-hand side. And in the middle, the manufacturing execution system, which drives the operations within your operation itself. So let me just talk to some of this stuff. First of all, ERP. We need everything that we do in a business loaded into ERP as data. We need complete integrated knowledgeware of the business residing in ERP, either directly or indirectly through other linked systems, so that we can actually manage the planning functions of the business, manage at least from a financial and an operating point of view, the performance of the business, and be able to execute the plan in a very forthright manner. So ERP is an essential ingredient for Industry 4.0. And it's important that that's recognized as being a modern ERP system that can cope with the infrastructure that you're going to need to run the business in Industry 4.0. If you've got a lot of new products, as I've said, you're going to need a very strong CAE environment that allows you to manage not only the obvious parts, which are the CAD/CAM environment, but also the engineering simulations that might be necessary for the sophistication of the product evolution. You're going to need to be able to link with the computer-aided process planning so that you can at will move the product into manufacturing. And in fact, you need to start automating your inspection and computer-aided testing environment so that as you prototype, you can test in real life the environment of your product. So CAE is a big piece of the action, as is ERP. The third big string here is the QMS system. We need to take what we've been doing manually and automate that with sophisticated new product introduction systems, making sure our design for manufacturability is documented and into the system. Some of this can go into ERP. And also our ISO and continuous improvement environment needs to be automated so that we're much more slick at doing audits, and our procedures we can train very quickly on procedures, and we can use the problem solving tools in real time. So that's the top end. If you look at the supply management side of the business, ERP can do a lot here, but what we're moving towards is a completely integrated supply management system that takes everything you would normally do on managing your suppliers in terms of first article procedures and the corrective actions, etc., but also your surveys for your suppliers, supplier certification procedures and process, and how it links back into your ERP. All needs to be automated so that all of the drudgery of purchasing and managing the supplier, and even the effort the supplier has to put in, is eliminated, so that you can ask for a better performance from your supplier because the paper flow is less. And in some industries with a lot of compliance issues, this is a big chunk of work. And so if we're going to do this properly, we need to make sure the SMS system is really sorted so that you've got rid of the waste of the compliance part of your business for your suppliers. Now, the centerpiece is MES. Now, there's a lot of debate between all the providers in this arena as to how this is going to go. It depends on the sector. I've seen different approaches in different sectors. But generally speaking, it's a partnership of your system providers, certainly at the ERP level, and your industry-specific process equipment OEMs, because down there in the green, you've got automation centers that need to plug and play very cleverly and very accurately and smartly into your Industry 4.0 environment. So I would suspect that there's going to need to be a partnership of your big system, your enterprise systems, and your specific process equipment OEMs if they're sophisticated systems. Also, the CAM environment that links the CAE and the manufacturing shop floor together needs to also be part of this integration. So you put that together, there's a few big components here that we want to talk about. There's three. I'll talk to the first one. Obviously, as you start automating more seriously and significantly, you're going to need a lot more maintenance of your system. You've got a lot of capital tied up. It's got to work. And so a very strong total productive maintenance system needs to be put in place. Some of these currently are kind of standalone, but they need to be integrated very much so that you can do predictive maintenance on the machines. You've got everything at will in hand. You know, a rag and a spanner is not going to, rag and a wrench isn't going to work anymore. It needs to be much more real time, and the information exchange needs to be very thorough. So as you automate and put sophisticated automation together with smart, intelligent computer controls, you're going to need the equivalent total productive maintenance system to go with it. And so a lot of sectors are beginning to take a look at automating the TPMS right into the machine centers. So they're part of the machine controllers, and they're just as integral as the operating system of the machines that they're maintaining. So that's TPMS. Next, you got factory data and control systems, pretty rich area. A lot of businesses have automation equipment with some degree of factory data collection systems resident on the automation systems, and operator interfaces that are pretty slick, but not enough to be done if you want to go to Industry 4.0. You got to keep working at it. You need to create an environment that can start measuring overall equipment effectiveness, and so you can drive productivity right at the capitalization level, right at the machine level, and it needs to be real time. So this environment is starting to, you want to start linking your ERP system into your factory data collection system. It needs to be, as I say, OEE orientated so that you've got real time performance measurements. Then if to do that, you're going to start building data tables of how your machine functions so that you can measure performance, availability, and quality, and actually characterize the rejects as they occur without overly amounts of operator input, although there would be an operator input screen for, barcoding in specific information from a tablet, for example. This is where it's going. New machines on the drawing board right now are going to have these things resident, and they need to be integrated with ERP if they're going to work. So this is actually where lean hits the shop floor. You're going to need, as you evolve your factory data collection and control system, not only will it communicate with your planning tools, but it will also be a central, like a microcosmic continuous improvement environment where you can actually start working through micro problems that are where you're ending up in terms of improving productivity. If you solve the big problems, then it's day-to-day smaller problems need to be fixed quickly. And so the factory data collection system needs to keep up with the micro problems that you get with an automation system. Material thickness changes, machine needs to change. How do you manage that? How do you manage the Pareto chart of issues? How do you do the 5 whys? Just how do you do that without bothering the operator too much? And how does the operator do it for you with a very clever integrated system? That's what factory data and control system will look like as we approach Industry 4.0. Has to be that good. Next one is actually pretty new to a lot of us. It's certainly the last of the 3, and this is the smart inventory management system. Now, obviously, as we refine our process and lean it out, we'll be able to manage inventory better anyway, but you're still going to have issues where you've got processes which are linked with material management systems. So going back to this slide a second, you're going to have work in process moving between automation centers. You may not have the luxury of conveyorizing everything between machines, although you can try. And so if you need that, then you're going to use a SIMS. I want to give you, first of all, how it used to be. This is Industry 3.0. I know some of you will smile, but you receive stuff. You put it in raw material inventory, you take it out into work in process, you move it, you finish it, you put it in finished goods, and then you ship it. And you may use a skid, and you may use these things. There's all kinds of conveyance devices that people use to move material around their shop or even between buildings or between their suppliers and their process. So let me just say what happens normally is if you do want to know where things are and it's important to you, well, you're going to put controls in place and you're going to have manual activities, maybe RFID if you're lucky, maybe some barcoding, and you're going to start moving this stuff from one place to another. Every time you do it, you're going to do a transaction, perhaps erroneously. Might be some issues with doing this efficiently. It takes time, and it's quite frankly very expensive, although you can automate it as best you can. So that's Industry 3.0. The new way, the Industry 4 solution, is a smart tag. And you put the smart tag, first of all, you design your system so you know where things go in your process. Part of your lean out is to make sure that you've got organized areas where you'll do activities. Then you put a smart tag on that same device and it automatically moves. And as your computer-aided process planning tool sequences it through your operations, it actually calculates and gives you a complete readout without anybody doing a transaction as to where things were, at what time, and when they happened, and where they are. So you're utilizing the movement using this system and I'll explain how it works. We've got gateways, which are like readers across the facility. Everything that moves within the facility can be measured by these these tags, which can be simple, which are just transactional, like an RFID tag, or a smart tag that can actually locate to within, say, 3 inches or 10 millimeters, 10 centimeters, or a super tag that also has the ability to plug in a sensor port and read all kinds of different sensor activities. If you can buy a sensor with for any kind of media read, and then you can plug it in and use it as a super tag. So what we're doing now is we've got the whole facility gateway, so we can see everything that's moving within the facility, and then we can actually see where things are. So depending on the level of tag you use, which obviously is an increased cost to those tags, you can then see where everything is without really doing very many physical people transactions. You can also use a GPS tag to, when it's on the truck, to actually see where it goes outside of your gateway zones. So now what you've got, let's take a work order in a tote, you got a tag on it, the reader reads it, you know where it is within 3 inches and what zone it's in. Or you can put a tag, a super tag on the truck, and you can actually then also read simple tags. So when you put something away with a simple tag on it, you know where you put it, and there's a record without anybody recording bin locations or shelf site locations. You can also put it on machines, and even if you've got a machine that's not smart enough yet, you can add sensors to the machine and then put the super tag on and read that back to your system. Or you can, some industries are now putting them on people, where it's a hazard environment. They want to know where their people are. For safety reasons, they can actually also download information through a super tag located on an operator. So that's the environment, and it's one of the recent outcomes of an Industry 4.0 discussion, where we can now manage ourselves from a cyber physical point of view as far as movement is concerned. A lot of people are using this for asset management, inventory management, and quite frankly, safety systems. You could also use this as part of a global positioning system. So this is actually the third piece of the 3 parts you need for a successful MES. The TPMS system for maintenance, factory data collection system to really grab and manage all of the inventory, all of the controls that you've got on your machines, and download your plan, and then also your inventory management system, the SIMS.
So Nigel, just chiming in here, I guess from what I'm seeing here is the evolution that you've witnessed together with the future of these technologies. Obviously, diving in and assuming that you can get into an automated inventory system when you've never had an inventory system before could be a little bit troublesome. So we often talk about crawl, walk, run, and the evolution.
Yeah.
I know later we'll talk about assessments and coming up with strategies, but any insights that you have about some of the big payoff items? Obviously, ERP can provide the big data and becomes the data warehouse for a lot of this information. The ultimate goal is to provide decision support, right? Give me information that I can use with the
I think yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously painting a futuristic picture of how the whole thing works in the end. But as you roll it out, you're going to have to, be very conservative about, what you put in place. The trick is to make sure you've got a vision of where you want to end up, because you are trying to connect this stuff together. So that's the first statement. So knowing where you want to go, where your priorities are, is very important. There's no question that the ERP environment is the target area for getting that done first, because without ERP you have no plan, and all these other systems are going to be not really providing any benefit. I've seen people put in a very strong CAE system without a CAM environment. That doesn't make any sense. You end up with a great design, but it's not linked with your shop floor. So it doesn't matter which way you look, you're only as good as your weakest link. And if you don't have an ERP system that's functional, the MES isn't going to work. It's not going to have good plans. You could start with some very smart shop floor control stuff. If you've got great automation on the shop floor, I wouldn't wait if it's got resident factory data collection, for example, to start using it for continuous improvement. But that might be the only place where you can have an isolated cell of activity without an ERP. if that helps.
No, it does. Thank you. Yeah, just it's all about evolution and prioritization.
It is, and getting it lean first. The other point I made is that if you don't have it lean, you're going to automate waste real quick. So you got to, you know, I'll show you later in the next couple of slides that you got to have a bit of religion here as far as lean is concerned. So the almost there, the functionality that we've got here is, you know, pretty much what I've described. Great connectivity, you know, great big data management, AI environment, cyber physical, or else, you know, decentralization of decisions. Think about the factory data collection system and be on a fixed problems at the shop floor level. Decentralization of decisions makes sense in some environments and not in others, so you got to be careful. And environmental sustainability will probably come, but also the ability, one, the other thing you get from this environment is a strong capability to do continuous improvement. So it feeds on itself. Not only does it save you labor effort and takes waste out of your business, but it provides an environment to actually improve your business as well. So you keep on going, right? So if you don't have continuous improvement, handshaking, or lean and Six Sigma shaking with this technology, it's not going to work. So you have to make sure that the evolution plan consists of a strong lean thinking environment as well. This is something I put together for the students. I teach at a college, and this is kind of a simple combat drill for Industry 4. And it's kind of cute. I don't know if you guys are smiling when you look at it, but it's really simple language. You know, if it's waste, eliminate it. If you can't eliminate waste, reduce it. If it adds value, integrate it. You know, if it's dumb, make it smart. If it moves, track it. If it needs to communicate, connect it. If you can make it learn, teach it. If it's a cost, measure it. And if it's got a human intervention, please start over because you've missed the point. And if it's not competitive, continuously improve it. So kind of a silly kind of list, but it does underpin exactly what Industry 4 is trying to do. And of course,
I just actually on that comment, I mean, I just today even saw an email that came out, a communication from somewhere, and it spoke to the idea that if you can't really justify, if you can't put a return on investment on a new technology, don't do it. And I think, you know, here I am, I'm in the industry of technology.
Yeah.
But you know, pragmatically,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's got to make sense.
Don't fall in love with the idea that you're going to polish your factory and it's going to look world class, and that's great, and that's perhaps part of an output, but you need to focus that investment. You need to make sure it's justified. You need to understand what it's going to do. Now, you know, dig with vendors, dig with, you know, your staff, dig into your processes, because there are ROIs that are out there. Maybe you're not completely visible to you, but there are ways to look at things differently. But back to the point, you can't measure it. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it, right? So
yeah, there's some real truths on this list. I mean, some of this list is really, you know, pushing all the buttons about what lean and Six Sigma and you know, performance looks like. But you know, it's a nice little list, and you know, it's got merit. People like it. So just wanted to put that into the presentation. But to your point, it's not, you know, don't grasp for the shiny bright things that, you know, cost you a lot of money if they don't pay the rent. You know, you gotta stay focused on things that really get to the bottom line pretty quick. And that's why, you know, lean is first, because that takes waste out. We shouldn't be there in the first place. And then you go after automation. But then you do, you know, we've gone to another level of automation with Industry 4.0. We can now connect the system with the automation. So we've got, you know, the complete journey now of not only looking at white collar activities, but blue collar activities, corporate activities, all connected, and taking out not only the functional waste in those areas themselves, but how they connect. And that's really the important part of Industry 4.0. So I had questions here, which we got a quiet group here, Peter. John, you don't have a lot.
Does anyone have a question? I don't see any directly in the chat, but you're welcome to unmute yourself if you have something specific. Okay.
I'll keep going. It's okay. I'm not offended. Because the next step really is how do we get started? And I want to basically talk a little bit about the vision which is what we've talked about. And the fact it is a roadmap. So this is, this is pretty standard stuff. It's the sort of stuff you do in a lean transformation. But first thing you have to do is look at a vision of how you want the business to look in the future from an industry 4.0 perspective. And you're probably going to need a joint provider syndicate. You're going to need people like ourselves and others that play a game in your business of helping you get there to talk about the future, not so much what's capable.
Nigel, I
Yeah.
apologize. You were muted there, so you're back. Okay.
Oh, I got lost. So this is a classic sort of roadmap for any significant change in your business. But the first part is vision and scope, and because the industry 4 is pretty new, and because it needs to be linked with lean, you need probably to pull together a joint provider syndicate of people that like ourselves that can support you with the technology and also the thinking process to get to industry 4.0. So it's important that you have a team of people helping you with that vision and scope, as it's a big potato to get done. The second thing that we recommend is done is, I gotta get is that we do a readiness survey. What we're finding is that there's a lot of moving parts here. There's a lot of things that need to be sequenced properly and prioritized. And so a readiness survey, not just on industry 4.0 technology, but all of the things you need to change in the business, including leaning out, installing ERP, needs to be surveyed so that you do things in the right sequence, because it is a big elephant to eat. So that readiness survey is what I want to talk about next. I'm going to use the same structure. And you'll get, this is actually the same structure that I use to describe industry 4.0. And all I'm going to do is just take that structure and put it into a grid, add some stuff like systems and organization. And that's the structure we're using for our industry 4.0 scorecard. And we've added some checklists. One of them, of course, is lean. And we've now got 7 key process systems and 5 checklist groups that provides us with a very thorough checklist system for getting ready for industry 4.0. So what we would do is use that to sort of survey exactly where we are and where we need to go and what the priorities might be to get there, which would then give us the ability to document our score. Now, this tool can be used on an ongoing basis, so that it's not only a readiness survey, but it's a status device, so you can see, how you, as you move forward, how you're doing and whether you're working on the right stuff. So it's really a very formal, continuous improvement tool for all the changes you're going to undertake. And then, of course, you move off, and using that industry 4.0 scorecard, you can then build a team, appoint a coordinator, and start a integrated evolution plan for whatever it takes, whether it's a lean industry 4.0 journey, or if you're already there on lean, industry 4.0 journey. But then you start to execute using that same measuring device to see how you're doing. Because you're spending a capital, you're going to be investing in a new infrastructure for the business. And so getting that bottom line to look right and make sure you're doing the right things is very important, which was John's point earlier. We want to make sure it's not shiny, bright stuff, and it's nice to do, and the engineers get excited about it, but it's getting to the bottom line properly. So this is a significant and large undertaking, very similar to a lean transformation. So it needs to be done in a very high-end level. It's the sort of thing that would be downloaded from the boardroom and then monitored and managed by the senior execs of the business for its lifetime. That's really what the roadmap consists of. I'm doing fairly well. I got 10 minutes left, and I'm at the final slide, so that's really good timing so far. Time for questions. I'll be quick on this one. This is recap. Take-back manufacturing is going to be aided by Industry 4.0. It really, puts the cap on the lid that we need to reshore. But reshoring is already happening. So in some sectors, you've got to keep up with the reshoring activity, so you're in place for the rebirth of your industrial sector. We recommend reviewing the reshoring options that you have by looking at a balanced sourcing model. If you're not looking at reshoring, depending on the business you're in, you should be. Industry 4.0 is a strategic decision because it not only helps reshape the business you're in, but also it can shape the inside of the business pretty quickly too. And it's got some bottom line savings trapped right in there quickly. We believe that a provider syndicate needs to be put together. If you've got automation experts delivering automation solutions for you, then people like ourselves that do ERP should be talking to each other because you want that thing to be integrated. ERP and CAE are foundational, especially ERP for Industry 4.0. You can't go anywhere without an integrated business plan. And you need somewhere where you can put all your knowledge so that you can then access it as part of Industry 4.0. It's the time's up. You know, we spent the last 2 decades worrying about supply chains and offshore, doing trips to Shanghai to try to get cheaper product. The game's up, guys. We got to go back and start looking at our own operations and where our suppliers are down the street. And not wasting any time on inventing the wheel. We got to get started on that roadmap. That's my message. Got to get started on the roadmap. Any questions?
Feel free to unmute yourself if you have any questions. Well, you know, just while we're doing that, Nigel, thank you very much. I mean, your insights, your experience have, you know, this isn't just technology for technology's sake, but you know, the impetus, the requirement, the need for urgency is here. Onshoring is real. Onshoring is happening. I think every week we're getting a call from somebody who's bringing a new plant online, bringing back production from some other areas, or finding other locations. And there's still some of that going on. But nonetheless, having a foundation to build on, having the ability to, you know, really a platform for change and a roadmap makes a lot of sense. You know, my 2 cents on this is that really what you're speaking of is not technology for technology's sake, but tools to aid the continuous improvement journey and to take out waste, to help you measure and manage your business better and provide valuable insights for decision support. And so, you know, starting with the foundation pieces, you know, we have many types of clients and people here on this call today. Some of you have an ERP, some of you are moving into an ERP, and some of you had ERP for a long time and you're ready for that next step. That journey, that continuous improvement journey and the journey of a customer with ERP are really relevant here because as you're trying to pull out that waste, there are many solutions and tools, whether you're using, in our case, the Epicor tool set, or you have other machines and other things you need to integrate to. There's a lot of ways to get there. And Epicor definitely has some tools for integration as well. So we can speak to these other applications and other databases and other machines. We've done lights out factory integration. And it's not something we get a chance to talk a lot about with our clients because often the focus is get me going on my ERP. But the ERP and the extension of the enterprises under Industry 4.0, you've really highlighted here the building blocks. And I think this is an important, you know, demystifying the technological terms and make it a little bit more straightforward.
Yeah, there's, you know, one of the things that, by the way, I am not sitting on the beach, but if you do Industry 4.0, maybe you can, you know, but really my main takeaway, you know, for you is that imagine if your competitors start doing this before you do. You know, it's the same with early lean. You know, we were finding clients that had to do lean because they weren't keeping up with their competitors. And this is another coming of, you know, it's not going to be, you're not going to be able to go offshore and get a cheaper price and ship it in because those, you know, the tipping point's been reached. So you got to do it more locally. You got to be as good as your competitor. If they embrace Industry 4.0 before you do, then they're going to have a strategic advantage. So, you know, customers are going to want things quicker. They're going to want them right. They're going to want them to be cheaper. The only way to do that is to take the waste out of your own business so you can pass on the savings to your customer. And that's really what Industry 4 is. It's another generation of what was a productivity improvement tool. And I got to admit that we used to buy capital in isolation, and it was different. It justified itself, but it really didn't change the business because it wasn't integrated. And so that was really Industry 3.0. I mean, as a manufacturing engineer, I've done it. I've bought capital to automate waste, and so, don't do that, not if you can do Industry 4.0 and combine it with lean. And so that's the new game, is we got a Industry 4.0. It could have been called Lean Mark II. But, we decided to call it Industry 4.0, which is great. But it's about the next generation of productivity of a business. And the game's up. We're going to reshore the hell out of ourselves. And it's going to be politically driven, I think. Not next week, but in a few years. And we got to be ready. And automation is going to have to be going to pay for itself a lot quicker than it is now. And the only way it's going to do that is if it's integrated properly. So it's an integration journey that we're on here. It's to sort of hitchhike off of what John's already said. And this is the environment you got to create. If you don't have your own plan, every trade show I go to, I'm seeing companies talking about Industry 4.0. So maybe we're ready for a dialogue. But if you're doing ERP, good start. John, over to you.
Great. If you want to maybe move to the next slide, I guess the really, the question, how do I get started? 6S through its evolution and having, well over 350 clients that we've implemented with ERP, have really seen a need to get a little more strategic with our services. It isn't just any longer about, can I get control of my inventory? Can I schedule? Can I run MRP? We're moving into, and have been extensively over the years, moving into more, best practice consulting around the use of these tools. And with that, we feel the need to leverage the expertise of someone like Nigel and his knowledge. So if you're interested in getting an assessment or reviewing your needs, regardless of where you are on that journey, we're very interested in helping you. And whether it means the scorecard that we've heard here from Nigel, that gets right into it. If you're earlier in the journey, it might be a little bit more about, how a business system, a system of record with best practices built in, can help your business to lay that foundation. Many times I've heard people say, well, if I buy this machine, and I think Nigel highlighted it, he's bought equipment to automate waste. If you buy a new piece of equipment and it just improves some aspect a little bit, you're not necessarily, you may not even know the utilization of the previous machine, or there might be other places in your organization that need to be improved. And so, speeding up one process without having a bigger picture view is really what an assessment can help you with, understanding the impacts and understanding where to focus. So we do offer that service, working with you and with Nigel, and we're very interested in any company out there, regardless of where you are in that journey, to maybe pick up the phone or email us, sales@6S Partners. There's linkages and videos and all kinds of things on our website, including our YouTube site. So we have lots of case studies, and there's others we can share that may not be as formally documented, but lights out type of operations where we're speaking directly to machinery with advanced MES, manufacturing execution, and machine interface communications. So lots of opportunities there, and we thank you for joining us today, and look forward to helping any of you that raise your hand. Hopefully this has been informative. Thank you so much, Nigel, for demystifying this term Industry 4.0 and what it can mean, and breaking it down into the pieces that make sense. Again, it almost is a bit of a crawl, walk, run journey as well. I've heard somebody say, with some pieces of automation, some of them will let you screw up at the speed of light. and I think the key there is to have a lean, holistic approach to what you're trying to accomplish, so that you can see the objectives and justify the investment.
Yeah, I think also, you know, that when you look back over the years of the ERP journeys we've all both been on, if you're starting out with ERP, you've got a great opportunity to learn from, you know, we now have a very mature environment for business systems. So, you know, it isn't good enough just to do it in, yes, you've got to do it in baby steps, but there's an opportunity to really fast track those baby steps, because, you know, we're on solid ground in terms of our knowledge of what it takes to do it. Pretty much. I mean, even though Industry 4.0 is new, there's a lot of strong, robust technologies in that diagram that I put together, which you can just plug and play with. So it's not as difficult if you get a good plan to do this than it used to be, is the point.
Very good. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Hope this has been informative for everybody, and we'd be happy to engage together with Nigel and your organization. Let us know how we can help. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day.